Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho. It is a Thursday, the 16th day of October, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. Contractors Sara and Curly Discaya have withdrawn from the ongoing investigation by the Independent Commission for Infrastructure. The decision was apparently triggered by a recent interview in which ICI Commissioner Rogelio Singson said the couple was not being considered for state witness status. The Ombudsman's initiative to lift restrictions on public access to official statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth is gaining support from members of both the Senate and House of Representatives. And joining us to talk more about this later is Attorney Nepomuceno Maluluan, convener of the Right to Know Coalition. And the Department of Health has designated key hospitals in Metro Manila that will act as primary healthcare centers in the event of a major earthquake known as the Big One. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda, Ombudsman Boying Remulla believes that the Discaya couple may be withholding key information and even protecting certain individuals involved in the flood control scandal. More in this report.
Third time, Sara and Curly Discaya appeared before the Independent Commission for Infrastructure as part of the probe into the anomalous flood control projects. The hearing lasted for an hour, but according to the Discayas camp, they will no longer cooperate with the investigation. ICI Commissioner Rogelio Singson earlier said he has yet to see any potential resource person who could qualify as a state witness. The Discayas camp said they have been cooperating with ICI in hopes of becoming state witnesses.
That there was a statement by Commissioner Singson regarding his own personal take. He sees no witness. He qualified that as his own and not by the commission. So because of that, they are now saying that they will no longer appear before the commission and cooperate.
Ombudsman Boying Remulla told One News Storycon that the Discayas may be withholding information and protecting certain individuals in the flood control scandal. Not out of fear, but out of the belief that they could get away from all of this someday, presumably when the administration changes. He added that he has never seen the couple express fear.
Maybe out of political calculation. Wala pa silang nararamdaman fear. I don't see fear in their faces. Para silang parang sinasabi nila, balang araw makakawalan din ako, kaya hindi ko kailangan sabihin lahat. Basta parang gano'n. Parang, no. Diba, ibang kausap yan. You have to be very careful about everything you say.
Despite the Discayas withdrawal, the ICI insists that the investigation will continue.
Tuloy-tuloy pa rin. Kung ano man ang nasabi nila, kung ano man ang mga nasabi ng mga ibang testigo, will be sufficient enough, for us to continue our investigation, build our cases, and file the necessary recommendations sa Ombudsman.
Meanwhile, former DPWH Undersecretary Roberto Bernardo was absent from the hearing. His lawyer attended instead, bringing a medical certificate claiming that Bernardo was ill. Former DPWH Bulacan 1st District Engineer Henry Alcantara, who is detained by the Senate, was also hospitalized on Monday after experiencing chest pain, which doctors said was due to muscle cramps. According to Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, Alcantara was examined and brought back to Senate custody the same day. He said the Senate medical team conducts daily check-ups on all those in detention. Aside from Alcantara, Assistant District Engineers Bryce Hernandez and JP Mendoza of Bulacan are also detained at the Senate.
Members of the Senate and the House of Representatives are backing the Ombudsman's move to scrap restrictions on public access to the statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth, or SALNs, of government officials. Here's the report.
Ombudsman Boying Remulla has made it easier for the public to request the statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth, or SALNs, of government officials. The new policy covers the President, Vice President, and other constitutional officials. President Bongbong Marcos has expressed readiness to make his SALN public.
My SALN available to whoever would like to, kung hingiin sa akin ng ICI, di siyempre bibigay ko. Kung hingiin sa akin ng ombudsman, bibigay namin.
Lawmakers have also welcomed the ombudsman's move. Senate President Tito Soto said he is willing to release his SALN and will consult other senators on their preferences. Several senators said they have no issue with full disclosure.
You have to disclose. And in light of what's happening right now na maraming mga nasasangkot sa flood control projects, may mga related sa contractors.
Magandang hakbang ito para masimulan na ang paglilinis ng ating gobyerno. Itong pagiging normal ng transparency, mahalaga ito.
Senator Robin Padilla even vowed to be the first to release his SALN. Senator Kiko Pangilinan, however, argued that the first to disclose should be former Ombudsman Samuel Martirez. During Martirez's tenure, strict restrictions were imposed on public access to SALNs.
Doon sila mag-umpisa kasi siyempre tinago, di ba? Bakit kaya, di ba? Baka sakaling malaman natin ano yung dahilan bakit hinigpit, di ba? So, but anyway, of course, that's up to the current ombudsman to decide.
The Makabayan bloc in the House of Representatives slammed this so-called Martirez policy, calling it a betrayal of the Constitution. They added that the ombudsman should have lifted the restrictions a long time ago. Other members of Congress said they are open to releasing their SALNs but prefer a uniform policy to ensure consistency.
Para hindi lang ho ito pagsasarili ng mga disclosures po ng paisa-isa ng mga kinatawan. Pwede naman magkapareho lang po yung policy ng ombudsman.
House Speaker Boji D said he is ready to make his SALN public if necessary and encouraged other lawmakers to do the same.
Magandang mapag-usapan yan. During our break, mag-uusapan namin mabuti para sa ganon, maglabas ng gamay kung paano yung aming suporta sa paglabas ng aming mga SALN.
President Bongbong Marcos says it is not surprising that some are trying to drag his name into the flood control corruption scandal, calling it just politics. The president insists he has nothing to hide and believes the Independent Commission for Infrastructure will investigate based on facts, not politics.
I'm confident that whatever mud might be slung at the administration, that we will be able to show that these are politically motivated and do not actually have any validation in fact.
Despite talks of unrest and ongoing protests against corruption, Marcos says he remains confident in his administration's support from various sectors, including the military, but adds that complacency is dangerous.
It is dangerous for someone in my position to be complacent and to say, don't worry, everybody. Kung may reklamo, bukas naman kami. Sige, magreklamo kayo, sabihin nyo sa amin. Okay, if it's something that we have to attend to, we will.
President Bongbong Marcos wants to live stream the Bicameral Conference Committee meetings on the 2026 national budget. Marcos said Senate President Tito Soto and House Speaker Boji D have both agreed to open the Bicam to the public through social media live streams. He assured that there will be no longer any small committee involved in finalizing the budget. The move comes after controversy surrounded the 2025 national budget, which was allegedly altered during the bicameral deliberations.
I have the agreement of the Senate President and the Speaker na ganun ang gagawin natin. We will live stream the entire process so that if there are questionable, shall we say, insertions or additions or all that, it will also be clear who made those changes or who proposed those changes so that people will know.
Coming right up, Congress is backing the Ombudsman's call to scrap the current limits on public access to the statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth, or SALNs, of officials in government. Stay with us. We'll be speaking with Right to Know Right Now Coalition Convener Attorney Nepomuceno Malaluan. When Morning Matters returns, keep it here. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho, and here at Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give the context behind the headlines. As earlier mentioned, Ombudsman Boying Remulla has reopened public access to statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth, or SALNs, of government officials. The order reverses restrictions imposed by former Ombudsman Samuel Martires during the presidency of Rodrigo Duterte. The Office of the Ombudsman clarified that certain details, such as permanent addresses and information on minor children, will be redacted to comply with the Data Privacy Act. Malacanang and several lawmakers have expressed support for lifting restrictions on public access to SALNs. A coalition pushing for transparency is calling out COA Commissioner Mario Lipana over a possible conflict of interest in the nearly 1 billion peso contract to build the new COA headquarters. The Right to Know Right Now coalition revealed that one of the contractors, Lebron Construction, is tied to a company where Lipana's wife, Marilu Lauro Lipana, serves as president. The group says the link raises questions on whether the project was awarded without the commissioner's influence. Records also show that Marilu heads Olympus Mining and Builders, a firm that began securing DPWH flood control and road projects after her husband's appointment to COA in 2022. And joining us now to talk more about this, we have Attorney Nepomuceno Malaluan, convener of the Right to Know Right Now Coalition. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Yes, good morning to you, Gretchen, and to all your viewers.
Okay, Attorney, for the benefit of everybody watching, tell us a little bit about your group, Right to Know Right Now. What do you do, and who are you composed of?
Yes, ang Right to Know Right Now Coalition is a network of civil society organizations, academics, including business, the church, and we have been in existence since as early as 2002. And we have been advocating for the passage of the Freedom of Information Law. But at the same time, we are also actively engaged in what we call FOI practice, which means what the Constitution and existing rules give us, even in the absence of an FOI law. We actively exercise that right by requesting for information and using them in support of our advocacies of our members. The Right to Know Right Now Coalition is co-convened by myself, Ms. Malu Mangahas, and Ms. Joy Chavez.
Is the PCIJ a part of this coalition?
Yes, PCIJ is an organizational member of this coalition.
The Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism, because I saw several reports where the coalition was cited. Going now to the main topic, which is the Office of the Ombudsman relaxing rules around the release of SALNs, reversing the decision of the predecessor, Samuel Martires, requiring a court order and a notarized consent from the officials concerned. This time now, pwede na, no? How does this change the game for your group?
Well, the first is we'd like to establish that the baseline. And the baseline is that the Constitution, the law, and the ethical principles in public service require the submission and disclosure of the statement of assets and liabilities. Under the Constitution, Article 2, Section 28, this is included in the state policy of full disclosure of all its transactions involving public interest. And very specifically, yung Article 11, Section 17 of the Constitution requires the submissions and names actually the highest officials of the land to submit and make available the SALNs. And not only that, Republic Act 6713 provides very detailed rules on the submission and the disclosure of SALNs. And it is not just a legal requirement. It is based on very clear ethical principles as discussed or deliberated in the CONCOM. Sabi ng mga Constitutional Commission and framers of the Constitution, this is a mandate on the state to be accountable by following a policy of full disclosure. Public officials should make their statements or their SALNs available for public scrutiny and not merely stored in archives. And those who hold the greatest power must lead by example. So based on that, very clearly, the former memorandum circular of former Ombudsman Martires was in clear violation of the Constitution and the law. And for that reason, we welcome the correction made by the newly appointed Ombudsman Remulla, opening this for public access. However, one point with that is we are apprehensive of some of the procedural constraints that are still imposed under these new guidelines.
Which I would like to talk about. This has its caveats. In particular, there is a need for journalists to submit a copy of their report within 5 days of publication to the Office of the Ombudsman. At pwedeng pagbawalan if used for commercial purposes, linked to a pending case to influence or harass others. It is contrary to law, morals, or public policy, and tied to extortion or security threats. What will be the challenge with that?
Well, the first hurdle is unlike in an ordinary FOI request that you can submit online and just put a signed request. Ito you have to go personally and place your request under oath before an ombudsman officer. So, Gretchen, you cannot just simply request it. You have to go there personally and place your request under oath. And then, as you mentioned, maraming possible grounds for denial that is not found in the law, but they may be very widely or discretionarily imposed. You have read them. And finally, if you make any report, including probably a broadcast reportage, you have to provide the link to them. And meron din nakalagay dyan na kung hindi magtugma yung sinabi mo na purposes, for example, that might be taken against you and could exclude you from future access to SALN. So we believe that many of these procedural restrictions are, for one, they are not consistent with the ethical principles that is the basis for the constitutional provisions and the law. And secondly, they are an overextension of what is provided under Republic Act 6713.
In effect, nagkakaroon ng another layer here of supervision from the Office of the Ombudsman. Although, ang sabi nila, their goal here is information sharing para maging sumbungan sila ng bayan.
The practice, baka hindi pa nga lang sa practice, this can already have a chilling effect on the use of SALNs. But let me just also share with you, Gretchen, that the Right to Know Right Now Coalition just recently issued a challenge for disclosure of SALNs on a voluntary basis. You know, these rules does not prescribe or does not preclude our officials of the land voluntarily disclosing their statement of assets and liabilities. For one, they retain a copy for themselves. They have a copy readily accessible within their mother units, aside from the legally instituted repositories of this of their SALNs. And we wrote 316 high officials of the land, from the president, the vice president, the cabinet, members of Congress and the Senate, as well as DPWH secretary, undersecretaries, assistant secretary, and regional directors. And we requested for them to make available their SALNs, and we will provide a link so that the public will see them. And out of the 316, after 18 days have passed, we only received response from 13 individuals, and of those responses, only 5 members of Congress provided the information. So that's 4.1% response, of which of total 1.6% were positive response. And to us, this is indicative of the ethical principles behind or underlying SALN's requirement having not been really internalized in the public service. And we really link this with what is happening now in the country. Our leaders of the land are not prepared to meet the requirements of accountability in public service through such a demonstration of the commitment, Gretchen.
And what we're talking about now, actually, which is under the Office of the Ombudsman, there are only several officials or several offices under their jurisdiction. Ano? Tama ba na ang sakop lang nito ay ang presidente, ang vice-presidente at constitutional officials, which includes COA, which includes ano pa ba yung COMELEC, tama po ba?
Yes, that's correct.
Ang Supreme Court hindi po
Hindi kasama. Ang Supreme Court is its own custodian of its SALN. Senate and the House are its own custodian. And for the lower rank, for the cabinet members, it is the Office of the President. And for lower ranking officials, it is the Civil Service Commission. So those are different hurdles altogether. Right now, the matters of privacy and data privacy, in our experience, is being used quite extensively as an imposition for the disclosure of some of this. So the SALNs has been in existence since the 1987 Constitution and after passage of RA 6713. But in practice, and like many other practices, including for this infrastructure mess where there are so many legal safeguards in the entire budget cycle, are all distorted in practice.
So, ang hawak-hawak lang po na SALN nitong Office of the Ombudsman, bukod nga sa President, Vice President, we have the Civil Service Commission, we have the Commission on Audit.
And their own.
And their own, yeah. Commission on Elections, Commission on Human Rights, Office of the Ombudsman, Commission on Appointments, and Judicial and Bar Council. Tama po ba? Yun lang po.
Yes, under RA 6713, it provides for the various repositories of assets and liabilities. For example, President, Vice President, constitutional officials, and the National Office of the Ombudsman, yung senators and congressmen with the secretaries of the Senate and the House of Representatives respectively, justices with the clerk of court of the Supreme Court, judges with the court administrator, and so on. Regional and local officials, employees of elected officials are with the deputy ombudsman and their respective regions. So there are other officials that are with the deputy ombudsman at the regional level.
Kaya po pala nagre-rejoice po ating mga senador at congressmen dahil sa hindi sila sakop nito. Pero tell us a little bit about your group's experience on getting SALNs. Kung hindi po pala sakop ng Office of the Ombudsman, itong Senado at itong Congress at yung iba pang mga offices, Office of the local officials, etc. How difficult has it been to get SALNs released by the other SALN custodians that you mentioned?
Well, mahirap kumuha ng mga SALNs. If I recall correctly, sa Kongreso ay the standard of ombudsman martires of a consent on the part of the filer was there. In fact, the rules in the Supreme Court, historically, I know that there have been requests and memoranda filed with the Supreme Court, and there are also procedural restrictions similar to this. And of course, the memorandum of Ombudsman Martires has completely blocked the access to. We've not seen a SALN of a president or vice president for quite some time.
Oo, pero yung Senado, did they follow suit? Kasi iba po ito di ba? Yung Secretary of the Senate ang ang may hawak po ng mga SALN, ginaya po ba nila yung kalakaran doon ng ombudsman?
Well, no, not. I think the ombudsman's previous memorandum circular is the most restrictive of all. But there are also procedural guidelines by the different custodians. So sa CSC, we're able to get the information or the SALNs. In truth, we will be testing again now because we are launching a SALN tracker. And we started, as I mentioned, with an appeal for a voluntary submission of the highest officials, but we will also be testing again the procedures for each of these custodians.
Kanino po pinakamadali kumuha ng SALN? Which office po?
Well, sa CSC, we have been, because the CSC is
Civil
also
Service
custodian
Commission.
for,
Okay.
officials.
And now in your second effort or the nth effort, kaninong SALN po ang i-request po ng inyong grupo? Kasi we know that we didn't have eyes on these SALNs mainly from 2016 up until this point. Whose SALN will you try to access?
Well, we will follow at the first instance yung aming 316 requests for voluntary release. So that includes the President, the Vice President, the 25 cabinet members, 14 undersecretaries and assistant secretaries of the DPWH, and their 17 regional directors. But aside from this voluntary request, we will also be filing based on the procedure as required with the repositories of their SALN. So those are all going to be put in the SALN tracker. Even then, mayroon ng issue dyan kaagad, Gretchen, because it has now become unclear whether a republication, if we get access to them and put them in our tracker, if that is something that will be allowed. Of course, our position is that we should be free to republish these SALNs for general public
I want to go to the I want to go to the paper that you released, which is entitled "Conflict of Interest at COA's Doorstep." You referred to COA Commissioner Mario Lipana. Will you be asking for his SALN? And what prompted you to take a look, at this case? This was already mentioned in several hearings, also mentioned by Pasig City Mayor Vico Soto in his State of the City address. Ano po nakikita niyo dito sa kanyang kaso?
Well, ganito, nakita natin, as you mentioned in several hearings, that his wife is being linked to a construction company, that is the Olympus Mining Builders Group Philippines Corporation. Pero yung mga unang datos ay nakabatay lamang doon sa sumbong sa Pangulo. So they were focused on flood control projects. So what we did was to look at how many contracts Olympus Mining had, particularly with DPWH, and we found that's from 2022 to 2025, it had on its own 13 contracts worth 1.04 billion, not just flood control projects, but road projects, street lighting, and so on. And we also found out that it had several other contracts in joint venture with Lebron Construction. In all, in joint venture, there were 9 contracts amounting to 849 million. So, itong company ni Miss Marilu Laurio or Miss Marilu Laurio Lauro Lipana has a combined contract of 1.89 billion with DPWH. Now, its joint venture partner, itong Lebron Corporation, had a contract for the construction of COA's own building in 2021 worth nearly $1 billion. And Lebron Construction, what we found out is not only a joint venture partner, not just a commercial partnership, but itong mga incorporators na to ay kasama ng isa pang korporasyon where Mrs. Lipana was identified as a president. It is a mining company, and among those was the sole proprietor of Lebron Construction. So, 2 points here. The rules on conflict of interest is very clear, and there's conflict of interest when you are a sitting commissioner of the audit, because it audits all agencies, including the PWH. But not only that, there is a construction involving your own institution, the COA building, almost $1 billion, with a company with a related interest. And by the way, there is also an allegation of direct intervention, similar to the sponsorship of congressmen in the affidavits of Mr. Alcantara, the DPWH former district engineer, and also with the Undersecretary Bernardo. So we believe that the conflict of interest, as the facts currently show, requires our oversight and investigatory agencies, including ICI, Ombudsman, to look into this matter. And COA itself, as an
organization,
that keep its integrity, and we submitted the report to these bodies.
And napapatanong nga po ang mga tao, no? How could these officials get away with such a glaring conflict of interest kung asawa po niya mismo yung nakikipagkontrata with DPWH? Hindi po ba parang yun po ay kitang-kita na, hindi na tinatago, wala nang divestment na nangyayari? And so by the mere facts here that you just mentioned, ito po ay violation of law, clear violation of law already, and is it solid enough to bring before the Ombudsman and also Congress, because the commissioner is an impeachable official, right?
Yes, that is correct. And so now we have a system, Gretchen. The tragedy of all of this is that the system of accountability at all levels of the budget cycle, from budget preparation, authorization or appropriation, execution in the procurement and so on, and accountability with COA are all compromised. And so in truth, saan tayo pupunta? You will have an investigation and impeachment process by pardon being direct about it, also a tainted Congress.
So will you try to get the SALN of the commissioner and
Yes.
also the other politicians that are linked to construction companies?
Medyo malaki na yung workload natin din, Gretchen, because continuing, that report that you mentioned is already the 5th of a series. There's a 6th, actually, a companion study to this, and we're still doing these researches along with, dun muna tayo sa 316, but of course, yung constitutional commissions, in light of this report that we produced, we will also ask for their SALNs.
So have you submitted this report to the Office of the Ombudsman already? Yung kay
Yes,
Commissioner
we submitted
Lipana?
it to the ICI. We submitted
Okay.
it to the Commission, to the Commission on Audit itself, to the Office of the Ombudsman. We also submitted this to the Securities and Exchange Commission, because some of these are corporate entities making submissions to the SEC. At sa totoo lang, yung SEC ay napakahirap kumuha ng dokumento, ang mahal. dun lang sa articles of incorporation at doing research like this, sometimes you need to look at various corporation. Yun palang articles of incorporation, I think it's 1,200 pesos to get access to that. And then iba pa yung fees for the financial statements that are submitted. Now, these are public records that are imbued with public interest and must be made open. So in our submission, we also requested that we be allowed to access these corporate documents and submissions, which are regulatory submissions, at a reduced cost.
Yung SALN din po, kayo rin po magbabayad niyan, ano? Magkano po kaya? Do you have any idea how much?
Hindi naman mahal. They follow usually the reimbursement for the cost of reproduction. And sometimes digital copies are also provided.
Well, there are, as we discussed, several challenges still to the memorandum of the new ombudsman when it comes to the release of SALNs, particularly the submission to the office before or within 5 days of release or publication. But this is definitely a step back in the right direction, as you mentioned, given the public's right to know, which is the motto of your group, the Right to Know, Right Now Coalition. Thank you so much for your work, and we hope things get easier for you along the way as you do the public a service that's badly needed. We have Attorney Nepomuceno Malaluan, convener of the Right to Know, Right Now Coalition. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and to help us understand how this affects the investigations moving forward. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat din sa iyo, Gretchen, and good morning.
Up next at the Senate hearing, Senator Francis Pangilinan supported farmers' calls to raise rice import tariffs. He proposed reverting the rate from 15% to 35% to ease farmer losses from increased importation. All that and more when Morning Matters returns after a quick break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here in One News. The Agriculture Department has imposed a temporary ban on sugar imports until the middle of 2026 to help stabilize local prices. Secretary Francisco Q. Laurel and Sugar Regulatory Administration officials agreed that no importation will take place before the current milling season ends in May or June next year. The move follows plunging prices of raw sugar during the first bidding in Negros of last week. Officials clarified that there has been no plan or discussion for any importation under the 2025-2026 crop year, except possibly for reserve sugar once production figures are finalized. Meanwhile, farmers are urging senators to restore higher tariffs on imported rice from the current 15% back to 35% to protect local producers from further income losses. During a hearing, Senator Francis Pangilinan said the move would help offset the effects of cheap rice imports, which have pulled down farm gate prices by as much as 8 pesos a kilo. Farmer groups from Nueva Ecija and Occidental Mindoro blamed the government's lower tariff policy in rising imports for weakening the local rice industry. The Federation of Free Farmers added that the tariff cut barely reduced retail prices, with only about a 6 peso drop in stores. To talk to us more about these developments, we have Raul Montemayor, National Manager of the Federation of Free Farmers Cooperatives. Magandang umaga po sa inyo. Welcome back.
Yes, good morning, Gretchen, and good morning din sa lahat ng nakikinig.
Okay, una-una ho, ano po ang naging epekto nitong lower tariff policy po ng gobyerno po natin sa ating mga farmers? Nakita nga po natin, you are requesting to somehow raise that tariff back up from 15 to 35%. Help us understand.
In fact, it started at 50. They brought it down to 35. And then in July last year, they brought it down to 15. The intention was good because at that time, the import prices were shooting up. And in the process, nagmahal masyado yung bigas. Umabot pa ng almost 60 pesos per kilo in some cases. So they put the tariff to 15%. But after they did that, international prices started to go down very fast. No? So ang nangyari between July 2024 and now, nagkaroon ng over-importation at the low tariff of 15% and very, very cheap imports. No? And that brought palay prices down at the time that farmers were harvesting up to now.
Okay, so magkano na po ba ang ano ngayon? Ang bigas po ngayon?
According to the PSA, yung well-milled rice is around 50 pesos per kilo. Well-milled. At the peak of the price spike, it was about 56. Kaya ang sinasabi namin, bumaba naman siya ng 6 pesos. No? But when we reviewed the import prices, at the peak, it was coming in at about 45 pesos per kilo, imported. Bayad na yung taripa. Now it's down to about 26 pesos per kilo. Now, so, a 19 peso reduction in import prices. Putting pressure down on palay prices. No? Pero ang sinasabi namin, doon sa 19 pesos na natipid ng mga importer, bakit 6 pesos lang ang binaba sa retail? No? So we're telling them, it's the traders in between who are benefiting from that tariff reduction. Kukunti lang napupunta sa consumer. And then ngayon, nadadamay pa yung mga farmer in terms of palay prices. No? That's why we have been pushing the government to, at the very least, bring it back to 35% because apparently the import ban is not working in terms of propping up palay prices.
Oo. Ano po kaya yung nag-cost nitong 19 peso reduction in world prices?
Kasi nung late 2023 and 2024, I remember nagkaroon ng El Nino na no? So there was a lot of speculation na magkakahirapan sa supply internationally. And there was a time that even India banned its exports of rice. India is the biggest exporter of rice in the world. No? So nagkaroon ng speculation sa world market. There was a time when the import prices went up as high as $700 per ton. Ngayon, ang import prices from Vietnam, 350 na lang, 340. Almost half of what it was when there was a price spike. So, bumaba yung presyo ng international, then binabaan pa yung taripa. So talagang bumagsak yung import price. And that is putting pressures on palay prices. No?
Oo. So and locally, what are the farm gate prices of palay? Kamusta naman po yung yung margins of our farmers?
Well, again, I always use official statistics para hindi mag-away sa numero, no? So, PSA in its latest publication said that the average palay price in September, when the import ban was supposed to have been in place already, bumagsak pa siya ng 15 pesos and 60 pesos, 15 pesos and 60 centavos per kilo. Now, the PSA also says that the average production cost is about 14 pesos and 50 centavos per kilo. So, piso na lang yung natitirang margin ng mga farmers per kilo. They harvest about 4,300 kilos per hectare. So, ang kinikita ng farmer at current prices, kung kumikita sila, is only about 4,300 pesos per hectare. And they have to live with that until after about 3 or 4 months when they start harvesting it. Ayan yun sa mga kumikita ng konti, pero marami yung lugi na talaga kasi their cost of production is even higher than 14.50.
Oo, okay. So given the increased supply of rice, dapat ibalik ito sa, tama po ba, 35% po ba ang nire-request po ninyo?
Kasi ang basa namin when they imposed the import ban, they said this will help prop up prices. Pero hindi nangyari. Bakit? I think traders are thinking na although there are no imports coming in now, when the import ban is lifted, then the imports will start to flood the market again at 15% tariff. They have to contend with that a few months from now. So to play safe, they buy from farmers now at low prices Anticipating that they will have to compete with the cheap imports again after the import ban. No? Kaya sabi namin, if you increase the tariffs now, there is no effect on prices because may import ban eh. Wala naman mag-i-import pa eh, no? But it will signal the traders that they can now start buying higher from farmers because when the import ban is lifted later on, the imports will be a little bit more expensive. No? Yun po yung logic ng proposal namin. And we understand that DA agrees with that. They have already filed a petition with the Tariff Commission. But what we cannot understand is what is taking them so long. No?
Okay.
Why do they have to prolong yung agony ng mga farmers? Kasi this issue has been there for 4 months already.
I guess another question here is, no, syempre pinangako nga ho ng Pangulo yung murang bigas. I think the lowest would be around 25 pesos. Nasa na po na tayo sa gano'n, no? Kasi nabanggit nila po yung well-milled rice, pero yung regular, is it anywhere lower than the 25 pesos? Kasi subsidized po yun, tama po ba? What's the lowest price now that you can find in the market?
Well, we can see rice at 35, 40, 45, no? So, iba-ibang klase yan, no? The 20 peso rice that's being sold by the government is a subsidized rice, no?
Correct.
Siguro for the very poor, okay lang yun eh, no? Kasi talagang hirap sila. But we must remember, if they sell at 20, they bought the palay from farmers at 23 pesos per kilo. Palay pa lang yun, no? Hindi pa meal. They sell it at 20. They lose at the very least 20 pesos per kilo. Malaki yung lugi ng gobyerno dyan. No? So, although they publicize it as being sold in many places, actually the volume is very small. No? And the government is losing a lot of money. No? And I don't think that can be sustained for a long time. No? And the problem is if they do that too much, if they sell too much very cheap subsidized rice, that could also have an effect on palay prices.
If the government lifts it back to 35% tariff rate, do we have enough supply locally to last until the end of the fourth quarter?
Oh yes. That's why the import ban is not necessary or it doesn't have an effect because during this ongoing harvest, we harvest about, I would estimate about 6 million tons of rice equivalent. We have more than enough rice even without imports because it's harvest time. No? Ang problema natin siguro next year. No? But next year they will lift the import ban so imports will come in again. So medyo matapang sila magsabi na we will extend it up to December because they know we have enough supply naman. Hindi tayo maubusan. No? Pero ang sinasabi namin, by itself, the import ban does not prop up palay prices. Kasi nga, kinatatakutan ng mga trader, what happens when the import ban is lifted?
Okay. I guess we hope this call reaches the Department of Agriculture and our officials who are in charge of that. In the meantime, maraming salamat for explaining to us the scenario now of our rice farmers. We hope this gets solved in the soonest possible time. Maraming salamat, Raul Montemayor, National Manager of the Federation of Free Farmers Cooperatives.
You'll get there.
The Department of Health has identified key hospitals that will serve as primary healthcare centers in Metro Manila in the event of a major earthquake or the so-called big one. In the northern quadrant, which includes Caloocan, Quezon City, Valenzuela, San Juan, and Mandaluyong, the Lung Center of the Philippines, National Kidney and Transplant Institute, East Avenue Medical Center, and Philippine Heart Center were named as lead facilities. They will be supported by the Philippine Children's Medical Center, Philippine Orthopedic Center, and Dr. Jose M. Rodriguez Memorial Hospital and Sanitarium. The Eastern Quadrant, covering Marikina and Pasig, will rely on the Amang Rodriguez Memorial Medical Center and the Rizal Medical Center. As for the Western Quadrant, which includes Manila, Malabon, and Navotas, the Tondo Medical Center will serve as the main facility, supported by Jose R. Reyes Memorial Medical Center, San Lazaro Hospital, and the National Center for Mental Health. For the southern quadrant encompassing Las Piñas, Makati, Muntinlupa, Parañaque, Taguig, Pateros, and Pasay, the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine and Las Piñas General Hospital and Satellite Trauma Center have been designated to lead the response. Don't go away. More matters to discuss after a quick break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. A Philippine Coast Guard Cessna conducting a maritime patrol in Bajo de Masinloc was closely trailed by a Chinese fighter jet. The aerial inspection aims to investigate a mysterious structure spotted in the shoal, just 44 nautical miles west of Zambales. Despite the tense encounter, the PCG successfully confirmed the presence of the unexplained structure. However, it remains unclear what the structure is made of, when it was built, or what its purpose might be. Patrols are set to resume in the coming days to gather more information on the unidentified structure.
It is important for us to continuously monitor itong activities ng Chinese government. Dahil wala naman tayong intensyong masama. We are conducting our patrol in accordance to our sovereignty, and this airspace belongs to the Filipino people.
The Philippines will resume its e-visa program for Chinese nationals starting November. That's according to the Philippine Embassy in Beijing. The system allows Chinese tourists and business travelers to apply for visas online for short stays of up to 14 days, provided they enter through NAIA in Manila or the Mactan Cebu International Airport. Philippine Ambassador Jaime Flor Cruz said the rollout is part of efforts to boost tourism and trade as the two countries mark 50 years of diplomatic relations. The Department of Foreign Affairs and VFS Global will manage the e-visa system, which was first tested in 2023 to make consular services faster and more accessible. The Bureau of Customs is reaching out to U.S. authorities and American businesses after a U.S. State Department report highlighted alleged corruption within the agency. Commissioner Ariel Nepomuceno said the Bureau has contacted the U.S. Embassy and the American Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines to discuss the findings. The report cited bribery and inconsistent customs fees as obstacles for foreign companies operating in the Philippines, with several U.S. businesses reportedly asked to pay unofficial charges. Nepomuceno said the BOC has implemented reforms to strengthen transparency, including strict enforcement of its no-take policy and rules preventing conflicts of interest among staff. The Independent Commission for Infrastructure, or ICI, officially begins its asset recovery efforts today. And for details on that, we have mobile journalist Arles de los Santos. Arles, una-una, nasan ka ngayon at anong aasahan natin dito sa asset recovery?
Magandang umaga, Gretchen. Nandito tayo ngayon sa Independent Commission for Infrastructure o ICI dito sa Taguig City, kung saan nga ngayong araw ay isasagawa ang asset recovery meeting ng ICI para nga masiguro ang pagbabalik at pag-akuha ng mga umano'y nakulimbat ng mga pera ng taong bayan kaugnay ng mga maanomalyang flood control projects ng pamahalaan. Kasama siyempre ang iba't ibang mga sangay ng pamahalaan na ang ilan sa mga kinatuwa nito ay nandito na. Kasama dyan ang Philippine Competition Commission, AMLA, SEC, BIR, DOJ, LTO, BOC, COA, at iba pa ng mga sangay ng ating pamahalaan. At ang nais nga nila ay mapag-usapan kung paano mas mapapabilis ang pag-recover ng mga asset ng mga at ma-freeze ang mga pag-aari nitong mga konekta sa mga maanomalyang flood control projects ng pamahalaan. Kung matatandaan natin, nabanggit ni DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon na nasa 1,600 bank accounts na ang kasalukuyang naka-freeze at nagkakahalaga yan ng 4 billion pesos at maaari pa raw na tumaas ang halaga na yan at dumami pa ang mga accounts na na-freeze sa mga paparating pang araw.
Okay. Kanino sa sentro itong asset recovery? Kasi nakita na natin sa mga Discaya ay yung kanilang mga sasakyan sinubukan ng kunin ng Bureau of Customs. Pero alam din natin na hindi naman pwedeng basta-bastang kunin na lang. Ano yung mga dokumentong kinakailangan na maikalap ng mga grupong nandyan sa ICI ngayon? At sino yung sakop nitong asset recovery? Kasama ba dyan ang mga congressman, ang mga senador na nabanggit sa mga hearing?
So far, Gretchen, no, syempre isa sa mga pinakasusi kung paano nga ba ma-recover itong mga ari-arian ng mga nasasangkot sa flood control scandal ay syempre kung ano nga bang naging sistema, no, at pagpasok at paglabas ng pera sa kanilang mga bangko. So kasama natin ngayon dito ang Anti-Money Laundering Council at bukod pa dyan, yung mga personalidad naman, no, na maaaring maging sentro nito ay yung mga nauna ng ipinatawag ng komisyon kagaya na lamang nila Bryce Hernandez at Henry Alcantara. Kumpirmahin natin ang impormasyon kung kasama ba sa mga nais ma-recover ng asset o mga ari-arian ay yung mga ating mga congressman at senador na ang ilan sa mga ito ay pumisita na rin dito, no, sa ICI. Kasama na dyan si dating Senate President Jesus Escudero, maging si dating House Speaker Martin Romualdez at ang iba pa ng mga personalidad na maaaring ipatawag, gayon din si dating DPWH Undersecretary Roberto Bernardo.
Sa aking pagkakaalala, may recommendation to freeze their bank accounts sa mga senador, no? Am I correct in that? And what's the status?
Tama ka dyan, Gretchen. Kasama, no, sina Senator Win Gatchalian, Joel Villanueva, Senator Jinggoy Estrada at maging si Senator Chis Escudero. Bukod pa yan, no, doon sa lookout bulletin na inilabas din kahapon. So, sa pagpapatuloy kasi ng investigasyon, Gretchen, kailangan pa rin masiguro na tama yung mga impormasyon at susunod sa tamang proseso, no, para hindi ma-technical itong ICI sa nais nilang restitution. Dahil maging ang ating Solicitor General na si Darlene Berberabe ay nais siguraduhin na mabalik nga ang pera ng taong bayan na nakulimbat dito sa anomalya ng flood control program.
Okay. Abangan namin ang updates mula dyan sa ICI sa Taguig. Maraming salamat sa iyo. We have mobile journalist Arles de los Santos giving us a first take on the action happening over at the Independent Committee for Infrastructure. Maraming salamat. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen Ho. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.